Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome back to another show, Cursed Net Breakthrough Radio. It is September 15th, 2008. I'm Greg Messina, along with Byron LeBeau, co-author of the Cursed Net, and we will be speaking with guest Zen Garcia today from FallenAngels.tv. And he has much to speak on in terms of the documentaries that he's worked on and the books that he's written. Byron, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, Greg. I was interested in learning that our guest today, Zen Garcia, actually lived in the same neck of the woods as another guest we had on the program, Dr. Joy Pugh. And I'm extremely curious to see how he got about meeting Dr. Joy, and also how that documentary went with her.
Sure. Just touching on some recent events, we've had two major hurricanes hit in the past several months. The first one being Hurricane Gustav, which headed for New Orleans, and it did not turn out to be as strong a hurricane as Katrina, but it certainly did leave quite an aftermath. And of course, the one, Hurricane Ike, which has left many homeless in
especially
Texas.
In Galveston and Houston. It was devastating. Just on the news yesterday, both areas were really hurt badly.
Yeah, and you know what? Our prayers will go out to those people who are homeless, and we do pray that these people will be able to get through this. The Lord is there. He is watching, and the main thing is He wants everyone to come to Him, with a pure heart and an open mind, and bringing people to understanding the truth behind the times that we're living in. And Zen Garcia has actually has done a documentary regarding the Hurricane Katrina levees, the break. I believe that's correct. The Hurricane Katrina and the levees breaking, and I think people will be interested in what he has to say regarding that. It does go into the lines of conspiracy a little bit, but I think this is something that people also need to hear. And I really go back to Byron, this part in Scripture of Isaiah chapter 8, where he's talking about fearing God, and he says in Isaiah chapter 8 verse 12, "Do not call conspiracy everything that these people call conspiracy. Do not fear what they fear, and do not dread it. The Lord Almighty is the one you are to regard as holy. He is the one you are to fear. He is the one you are to dread." And this is a very important piece in Scripture, because you have to realize that that even though God relents from sending calamity, He does say that He is responsible for it, and that we are a fallen race, and the reason why we go through some of the things that we go through are because we are a fallen race, and that most of our hearts are not on the Lord. It is on material things. It is of things that just are more of a distraction, and anyway, I'm gonna let Zen come on in on this. Zen, how are you today?
I'm doing great. I really appreciate the time and the space that y'all are providing for me to bring out some of the research that I've done into these different areas and facets, especially with the levees. And I did make a documentary called When the Levees Break, the bombing of the lower Ninth Ward. it's there available on YouTube, and it explores a lot of what you were talking about with what really did happen in when the levees failed. And there's been numerous accounts, and even the ABC News and different newscasts that recounted how people witnessed and experienced bombings, the levees being bombed. And we all know that the hurricane actually passed east of New Orleans before the levees so-called failed or collapsed, and it wasn't until after the hurricane had already passed and the strongest part of the storm surge had already passed the city that the levees failed. And it was along a concrete barrier that was, I think it was like 100-foot stretch that was blown wide open in this concrete steel reinforced barrier. And there's been congressional testimony, and in my documentary I use all of that congressional testimony to verify all of what I'm talking about.
NBC News in depth tonight, the long road back from Hurricane Katrina and the emotional hearing on Capitol Hill this week with black residents of New Orleans, some of whom made incendiary claims that the federal government intentionally flooded their neighborhoods, something you hear a lot of in New Orleans. In depth tonight, here is NBC News senior investigative correspondent Lisa Myers.
It has become a strongly held belief by some in the storm zone. The idea that the destruction of New Orleans' heavily poor, heavily black Ninth Ward was neither an accident nor an act of nature. Harsh words at a congressional hearing.
I was on my front porch. I have witnesses that they bombed the walls of the levee. Boom, boom, mister. I'll never forget it.
Certainly appears to me to be a mass act of genocide and an ethnic cleansing.
Similar sentiments, sometimes couched as rumors, also have been voiced by Louis Farrakhan, leader of the Nation of Islam, and director Spike Lee.
I don't find it too far-fetched that they try to displace all the black people out of New Orleans.
Do you believe the government blew up the Trade Center? Do you believe the government blew up the levees in New Orleans?
I have to be honest, I don't know what happened with that. I do know this, that Minister Farrakhan is advocating strongly at this Millions More movement this Saturday for the victims of Katrina. And his argument about the levees in New Orleans is part of his and the Millions More movement, strong advocacy for the victims of Katrina.
Malik,
we must have a federal investigation and a United Nations investigation into what happened in New Orleans.
Yeah, this is very interesting information because not many people are knowledgeable in this area or even heard anything like this before. So how did you go about getting this information, researching it?
Well, it was after 2004 when John Kerry came out and conceded to George Bush without even all of the provisional ballots being counted in Ohio. And when John Edwards came out an hour before John Kerry did and said, we will not quit until all votes are counted. When he came out and conceded, I saw a video that Alex Jones had done an interview with public broadcast. I believe it was PBS or C-SPAN, and he was talking about how John Kerry and George Bush were related, how they were cousins, and that they were both members of a Skull and Bones society, the secret society in Yale. And when I found that information out, I started to do a lot of research into, well, not only the election in 2004 and the election in 2000, but also the events of 9/11. And when I started to research into the events of 9/11 and come to find out a lot of inconsistencies with what were told by the mainstream press and by the government and the things that were reported on, then I started to look deeper into all aspects of, like the 7/7 bombing that happened in London and the different things like that. Because if you really look into all these terrorist events, you find a lot of times that they have connections to government agencies and like the CIA or MI6, and it was those things that gave me an eye for discernment. And so I started to look at everything in the world and everything that the mainstream press was releasing through news reports, and I started to question everything a little bit differently. And because I had that perspective, truth was revealed to me in quite a different way. And ever since that time, the Lord has blessed me more and more with an eye for truth and an eye for discernment. And my research has led me into various aspects of all kind of different things that people consider conspiracy theories. I consider them conspiracy realities.